Freedom is the most seductive word in the human tongue. Every revolution cries for it. Every people demand it. Every manifesto begins with the promise of liberation. Yet history is merciless. Freedom never lasts. Every time men chase it, they fall again into chains. And Thomas Hobbes, the philosopher of monsters, saw this with brutal clarity. His Leviathan is not a book about liberty. It is a book about why liberty devours itself, why every dream of freedom produces its opposite, slavery. Hobbes lived in a time of chaos, civil war, executions, and uprisings. He did not see noble revolutions. He saw mobs tearing each other apart. For him, freedom was not light, but blood. When every man is free to do as he wishes, every man becomes a wolf. And wolves do not share. They devour. Hobbes's famous line, "Life in the state of nature is solitary, poor, nasty, brutish, and short," is not an exaggeration. It is a verdict. Freedom is the beginning of war. But here is the paradox. To escape the chaos of freedom, men surrender freedom. They agree, by fear, by desperation, to create something greater than themselves, an artificial monster. Hobbes called it the Leviathan, a sovereign so absolute, so terrifying, that it forces obedience. It is not born of morality or divinity, but of fear. The people chain themselves willingly because chains are lighter than war. They trade freedom for survival, and survival becomes the only freedom that matters. Do you see the trap? Freedom generates fear. Fear generates submission. Submission creates slavery, and slavery is called order. This is why Hobbes is hated and feared. He showed that slavery is not forced upon us by kings or tyrants. It is chosen by us, the herd, because we cannot endure true freedom. Look around you. Every nation praises liberty while building leviathans. Democracies swear by freedom, but the surveillance state grows, the police expand, the laws multiply. Citizens sign away rights with a click, surrender privacy in the name of security, obey algorithms that predict their desires. This is not new. It is the eternal return of Hobbes's truth. The crowd cannot stand the chaos of liberty, so they beg for chains disguised as protection. Philosophers have attacked Hobbes for centuries. Rousseau dreamed of noble savages. Locke dreamed of limited government. Revolutionaries promised liberty, equality, fraternity. But every one of them ended in blood, in guillotines, in dictatorships, in new leviathans. Hobbes was not cynical. He was accurate. Freedom always calls its own executioner, and here lies the deeper darkness. Hobbes understood that fear is the foundation of politics. Not love, not virtue, not reason. Fear. Fear of death, fear of loss, fear of others. Freedom multiplies fear, because freedom gives everyone the power to harm. Only when freedom is surrendered do men feel safe. Safety is slavery, but safety is what the herd demands most. This is why every constitution grows heavier, every revolution grows corrupt, every promise of liberty curdles into law and discipline. The Leviathan does not need to conquer, it waits. Freedom itself summons it. You can see it in your own life. The more freedom technology promises, the more dependent you become. The more liberty social media offers, the more trapped you are in its invisible chains. Every freedom plants the seed of a prison. Do not misunderstand. Hobbes was not celebrating tyranny. He was explaining inevitability. He was describing human nature as he saw it. Fragile, terrified, cruel. He stripped away illusions of virtue and revealed the core mechanism of power. He wanted peace at any cost because he believed the alternative, freedom, was war without end. So what does this mean for us? It means you must stop worshiping freedom as a god. It is not salvation. It is a bait. It is the spark that lights the bonfire of fear. Freedom will always collapse because men fear each other more than they value liberty. The Leviathan rises again and again because we summon it with our terror. And here is the challenge I leave you with. Is Hobbes right? Is freedom doomed to become slavery every time? Or is there a way to escape the Leviathan, to live without chains, without monsters? Comment below. Do you believe liberty is real, or is it only an illusion that always dies? Subscribe if you want to keep tearing apart the masks of philosophy. Like this if you have ever felt freedom dissolve into control. Share this with someone who chants about liberty, and watch how they respond when you tell them Hobbes saw liberty as a nightmare. Because the Leviathan does not enslave you. You enslave yourself by demanding protection from freedom. Hobbes's genius was to strip away every illusion about politics. He did not ask what men should be, but what they are when the masks are gone. And what he saw was fear. Not virtue, not reason, not community. Fear. Men fear each other more than they desire liberty. And so politics for Hobbes is nothing but the architecture of fear. This is why he called for the Leviathan, a sovereign so vast it resembles a monster stitched together from the bodies of its subjects. In the famous frontispiece of his book, the Leviathan is drawn as a giant king composed of countless tiny men, each one surrendering his will to the whole. It is a terrifying vision, but also an honest one. The power of the ruler is nothing but the collective obedience of the ruled. The chains are not imposed from above. They are forged from below, link by link, when people choose safety over chaos. The brilliance of Hobbes is that he saw freedom as self-destructive. Left unchecked, it collapses into war. Each man defends his liberty by preemptively striking his neighbor. Freedom arms every hand, and every hand becomes a knife. Fear escalates until life itself is impossible. Out of this spiral of paranoia, men choose submission. They beg for chains because the chains protect them from each other. This is the cruel logic. Freedom creates the terror that makes slavery desirable. But notice what Hobbes reveals. The Leviathan does not conquer by force. It conquers by consent. Not free, noble consent, but desperate, terrified consent. The subject hands over his liberty, saying, "Take it, if only you will protect me from others." Thus, freedom creates its opposite. And the Leviathan grows, not as a tyrant imposed, but as a guardian demanded. Philosophers who followed Hobbes tried to soften his vision. Locke said liberty could be preserved through limited government. Rousseau said freedom could be reborn through collective will. Marx promised liberation from class oppression. But every time, the cycle returned. Constitutions multiplied into bureaucracies. Revolutions dissolved into purges. Republics decayed into empires. Freedom once again turned into slavery. The Leviathan always returns, because human nature summons it. Look at the French Revolution. It began with cries of liberty, equality, fraternity. But liberty unleashed chaos. Mobs in the streets, heads in baskets, factions devouring each other. To restore order, Robespierre became the Leviathan. The revolution that promised freedom gave birth to the guillotine. Later, Napoleon crowned himself emperor, proving Hobbes correct. Freedom collapses into fear. Fear demands order, and order becomes empire. Or consider the Russian Revolution. The workers cried for liberation. They broke chains, toppled czars, demanded equality. But liberty quickly revealed its face: chaos, starvation, paranoia. To end the terror, Lenin rose as Leviathan, then Stalin. The revolution that promised freedom produced one of the most absolute states in history. Again, Hobbes smiles. Freedom armed every hand, fear spread, slavery became sanctuary. Even democracies prove his point. Every election is a ritual of liberty, a celebration of choice. But fear multiplies. Fear of enemies, fear of crime, fear of collapse. And with every fear, citizens surrender more liberty. They accept surveillance, stronger police, endless laws, constant restrictions, all in the name of safety. The Leviathan of today does not wear a crown. It wears cameras, algorithms, and databases. But it is the same beast Hobbes described. Do you see the pattern? Freedom is not the enemy of slavery. It is the seed of slavery. Liberty creates the very conditions that destroy it. The Leviathan does not crush freedom, it grows out of it. Every society that worships liberty ends up creating new forms of control to protect itself from the chaos liberty unleashes. This is why Hobbes is hated, because he does not flatter us. He does not tell us freedom is noble or natural. He tells us freedom is a nightmare that men cannot survive. He strips away the poetry of politics and leaves only the machinery of fear. And yet there is a deeper cruelty here. Hobbes knew that the Leviathan never truly satisfies. The people demand safety, but once enslaved, they dream of freedom again. They whisper of rights, of liberation, of rebellion. They revolt, and for a brief moment liberty shines again, only to collapse into chaos, fear, and chains. The cycle repeats endlessly. Freedom to slavery, slavery to revolt, revolt to freedom, freedom to slavery again. History is nothing but this endless circle. So ask yourself, is there any escape? Can liberty exist without summoning its own destruction? Or is Hobbes right, that every cry for freedom is only the beginning of a march into new chains? Comment below. Do you think liberty can last? Or is it always a mask for submission? Subscribe if you want to keep tearing the illusions from political philosophy. Like this if you see the Leviathan in your own life, governments, corporations, systems that grow from your own fear. Share this with someone who believes freedom is eternal, and watch how Hobbes dismantles their hope. Because in the end, freedom is not destroyed by tyrants, it is destroyed by itself. And the Leviathan waits, patient, to be born again from our fear. The Leviathan is not only a political monster, it is psychological. Hobbes understood something few dare to admit. The chains are not only outside, they live inside you. Every human carries their own Leviathan within, the silent sovereign of fear that dictates choices, limits risks, and forces obedience long before governments or rulers appear. The state is only a mirror of the inner slave. Think of freedom at the level of the self. You are free to quit your job, abandon your obligations, refuse every norm. Nothing physical stops you. But why do you not do it? Fear. Fear of hunger, fear of rejection, fear of chaos. You build a cage inside your own mind, a cage called responsibility, morality, identity. You say it is choice, but it is not. It is your inner Leviathan ruling you with threats of pain. You surrender liberty to maintain order in yourself. This is why Hobbes' insight cuts deeper than politics. He was not simply describing kings and nations. He was describing human nature itself. To be human is to fear, and to fear is to enslave oneself. We build our own Leviathans long before rulers do. The king on the throne is only the externalization of the king in your head. Notice how freedom terrifies individuals. When you stand at the edge of possibility, when you could leave, change, destroy, create, you feel paralysis. The void of choice is overwhelming. Jean-Paul Sartre, centuries after Hobbes, called this anguish. Kierkegaard called it dread. Hobbes saw it for what it was, the unbearable chaos of liberty. To escape it, we choose chains. We invent routines, obligations, beliefs, authorities. We beg for order so we do not have to face freedom, and this is why slavery feels safe. The employee who obeys a boss may complain, but secretly he prefers the security of orders to the terror of deciding for himself. The citizen who accepts surveillance may grumble, but deep down he is relieved someone else is watching. The lover who clings to jealousy may suffer, but the chains are proof of connection. We disguise these chains as comfort, as morality, as loyalty. But at root, they are Hobbes' truth. Freedom terrifies us, and so we beg for slavery. The Leviathan within is clever. It uses silence, guilt, conscience. It tells you that breaking the chain would make you wicked, selfish, damned. Hobbes did not call it conscience. He called it fear. But the mechanism is the same. Fear invents moral codes to justify its own rule. You are told liberty is irresponsible, sinful, reckless. You are told obedience is noble, virtuous, righteous. This is how the Leviathan grows inside, by disguising fear as morality. And here lies the darkest insight. Rebellion itself is already chained. When you revolt against one Leviathan, you summon another. The rebel who fights for freedom invents new laws, new systems, new punishments. The anarchist who destroys the state builds his own community, with its own rules, its own tyrannies. Even in personal life, the one who escapes a toxic relationship builds new walls of caution, new chains of fear. Freedom collapses into slavery again, because the Leviathan is not outside. It is inside. This explains why utopias fail. Every dream of a free society becomes nightmare. The commune becomes hierarchy. The revolution becomes dictatorship. The digital paradise becomes surveillance. Why? Because every individual carries fear within. And when individuals gather, their fears combine, magnify, and construct a monster to guard them. The Leviathan is collective fear embodied. Hobbes saw this as natural, even necessary. Without the Leviathan, society disintegrates. But here is the cruelty. The Leviathan never eliminates fear. It only manages it. It trades wild terror for controlled oppression. You are still afraid, but now the fear is predictable. You fear the sovereign instead of your neighbor. You fear law instead of chaos. But fear remains. Slavery remains. So what can be done? Perhaps nothing. Perhaps Hobbes is right. Freedom always decays because men cannot bear it. But there is another possibility. To face fear directly, to live without the inner Leviathan. Few can do this. It requires tolerating chaos, enduring dread, accepting danger. It requires living with freedom not as comfort, but as risk. Most will never attempt it. They will return to chains again and again. Comment below. Do you think the Leviathan lives inside you too? Have you ever felt yourself begging for safety over liberty, even in your own life? Subscribe if you want to keep exploring how philosophy unmasks the prisons we build for ourselves. Like this, if you've ever chosen order over freedom, and wondered if it was cowardice or survival. Share this with someone who preaches freedom, and ask them if they are ready to face fear without chains. Because the Leviathan is not only a king, it is the slave inside you who fears freedom more than bondage. The Leviathan never dies. That is the secret Hobbes left us, the truth most philosophers tried to bury. You can kill a king, topple a government, burn a constitution, but the monster always returns. Not because it is immortal in itself, but because men resurrect it. Fear resurrects it. Every cry for freedom is the summoning ritual that brings the Leviathan back to life. History proves this. Empires fall, republics rise, revolutions burn, but always the pattern repeats. Liberty opens the gates of chaos, fear floods the streets, and the people beg for order. The monster rises again, sometimes in the form of a crown, sometimes in the form of a party, sometimes in the form of an algorithm. But always it is the same beast, the collective body of men surrendering their freedom to escape the terror of liberty. Look at the modern world. Nations speak endlessly of rights, of liberty, of democracy, yet everywhere the Leviathan grows. Surveillance cameras on every corner, corporations mapping every desire, governments storing every word. Even your phone is a Leviathan, an artificial sovereign watching, predicting, disciplining. You call it convenience, you call it connection. But it is the same trade Hobbes described. You surrender freedom for safety, chaos for order, risk for comfort, and you call your chains progress. This is why Hobbes is feared. He does not give you hope. He does not give you revolution. He tells you the cycle will not end. The Leviathan is not an accident of history. It is the law of human nature. And human nature does not change. Every dream of freedom is destined to turn into slavery because we cannot endure the burden of being free. Yet there is a way to look at this truth not with despair, but with clarity. Perhaps the only real freedom is to stop chasing illusions of perfect liberty and instead learn to live with the monster. To recognize the Leviathan as inevitable and then decide how to use it. You cannot kill it, but you can study it. You can see how it grows, how it feeds on fear, how it seduces with promises. And once you see it, you are no longer its blind servant. You become its reader, its strategist, its interpreter. The herd will always worship liberty in words while choosing slavery in deeds. Let them. Your task is different. Your task is to know that every time they chant for freedom, they are calling their next master. Your task is to prepare for the monster's return, to know that it comes in many masks, but is always the same. The Leviathan is eternal, because fear is eternal. The only question is whether you will be ruled by it blindly, or understand it coldly. So what does Hobbes teach us in the end? That freedom is not salvation, it is temptation. It is the bait that leads to chains. If you truly want to live differently, you must strip the word freedom of its holiness. Treat it as a dangerous drug. Approach it with caution. Do not believe those who sell it as paradise. Remember Hobbes's verdict. Liberty without chains is war, and war ends only when we beg for slavery. The truth is merciless. You will never escape the Leviathan. But you can choose your chains. You can refuse the illusion that you are free, and instead confront the reality that freedom always decays. This clarity gives you an edge. It makes you less naive, less gullible, less easily seduced. It lets you see the world as it is, not as poets and politicians pretend it to be. Now ask yourself, which Leviathan rules you today? Is it your government, your employer, your technology, your own fear? Comment below with the name of the Leviathan you see most clearly in your life. Subscribe if you want to keep tearing the masks from philosophy until only the skeleton of truth remains. Like this, if you've ever felt freedom slip into chains. Share this with someone who chants about liberty and remind them, every chant is a prayer for a new master. Because Hobbes was right. Freedom is not the opposite of slavery. Freedom is its beginning. And the Leviathan, your Leviathan, my Leviathan, the Leviathan of every age, waits patiently, rising again and again, until the last voice of liberty becomes the first chain of obedience.